My name's Sean Brown. I'm a director on the board of the MIT Sloan Boston Alumni Association, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our 93rd Career Series session. It's on how to create an ATS or Applicant Tracking System friendly resume and sort of work through the process. As I think many of you know, we launched our Career Series back in 2009 in partnership with Keystone Partners, which is Boston's leading executive coaching and career transition firm. And we've now held more than 90 events featuring a wide array of experts from Keystone, our MIT faculty and staff, as well as alumni and other thought leaders to share best practices on this important topic. So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Her name is Reneé Zung. Reneé is Vice President of Curriculum and Content at Keystone Partners. She's based in North Carolina, where it's a little bit warmer than it is here in Boston today. And she's worked with senior executives, managers, and individual contributors over more than a decade on career transition. She holds a master's and bachelor's degree from Georgia State University. And Reneé, it's my pleasure to turn things over to you.
Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you, Tina, and everyone else on the call. I do have some pop quizzes, so I want you to be ready with the chat to put in your answers. Please stop me at any time, ask questions, put them in the chat. As Sean said, he is going to be monitoring those to make it as interactive and you get what you want out of the presentation. So I have a short presentation. I also have a really cool video that we're going to watch. So I'm going to go ahead and share my entire screen. I'm going to put this in slideshow. And we're here, just like Sean said, how do we beat that applicant tracking system and land a job? And it really starts simply with having a digital brand. Oops. And we're going to be talking about your digital brand and focusing on LinkedIn. We're then going to talk about, online job boards, the truth about them, the nitty gritty about what you can do with an applicant tracking system. Why are they around? They don't seem to benefit me. So why do companies still have them? And then something that's new, especially in this world that we live in now with video conferencing, these virtual reality interviews that might be a little bit different than the last time you interviewed. Most of us interviewed in person. And so that whole landscape has changed. So we're going to make our first stop, the digital brand. Why is the digital brand so important? Well, even before you apply to a job, you're found through your digital brand. LinkedIn is really the platform. Recruiters, 98% of recruiters are on LinkedIn. So you may have noticed over the years that LinkedIn is somewhat changing with reaction emojis. And I've even seen videos about people's cats and things that you wouldn't have seen on LinkedIn before. But Warren Buffett sums that up. It takes years to build your reputation, but it can take, one silly cat video going viral that you posted to just ruin your reputation. So in this digital age, everything that you post out there, there's a digital footprint. So we didn't have to worry about that years ago. But now, before you go ahead and post something, before you like something, really think about that, the implications that has on your brand, because we all have a digital brand. So I'm going to count to 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's all it takes for a hiring manager. If you're lucky enough that your resume gets spit out of the applicant tracking system lands in an internal recruiter's inbox. In 7 seconds, they're going to decide whether they forward that on to a hiring manager or not. If a recruiter calls you, they're going to look at your resume in 7 seconds, going to decide whether they're going to present you or not. So that again is part of your brand. So when we think about brand, I want you to think about just 3 simple questions. First, what do you do? Right? So a lot of us associate what we do with a job title. Oh, I'm a software engineer. I'm a finance analyst. I'm a VP of this. But that's not really what you do, right? That's your job title. What do you do in these positions? Are you, and what are you known for, right? So that's what you do and what's the buzz about you? Why do people come to you? So you're not really a title. So while we need titles on your resume and LinkedIn wants titles, what hiring managers want to know are, what do you do? What do people say about you? And then what matters to you? That motivation. So when you're applying and interviewing, it's really a matching game. So think of interviewing as a matching game. You get called into the interview because your skills match the job ad. But once you're called in for that interview, it's really that fit. What you do, what you're known for, and what matters to you, does that align with the company? And that's your selling point. So if you think of your brand not as my title, but this is what I do best. I'm an effective communicator. I build a culture of whatever that might be, or I'm the go-to person. I always solve the hard problems, the problems that no one else can solve. Maybe you think of yourself as a utility knife, or, in that interview, or what you're trying to say about yourself in that summary statement and answer that question. So why are you fit? Or tell me about yourself during that interview. They really want to know, not your title, they have your resume. They want to know, what do you do best? What do others say about you? But really what matters is that fit. So when we think about your brand, the first thing that we think about in this day and age is your digital brand. So we think about LinkedIn, 4 sections of LinkedIn only: your photo, your headline, which is by default your title, but that's not what we want in LinkedIn. Sure, we need that title as part of the keywords to be found, but what do you do? What are you known for, and what motivates you? Customizing your LinkedIn URL. LinkedIn gives you this URL with your name and all these numbers, takes like 2 seconds to customize it. And the message there is, this person's technically savvy. And then the about statement is not your bio. It's not, that David does this. You don't want to copy your company bio. You want it to be, I've always been curious. So that's why I became a scientist. I wanted to be able to improve people's lives by solving problems that, bring drugs to market or something, right? So that's who you are. That's what they want to hear. They don't want to hear, I'm a research scientist. I got my PhD at MIT, and, I have these patents and I've written these 6 articles. And the best way to show your brand in LinkedIn is your photo. So right here is a colleague of mine, and she's at a professional event, right? You know how many times you've been at professional events prior to COVID. And they take pictures and people have their hands around you and you have the brochure. That's a great Facebook, maybe Instagram, maybe that's part of your story, right? But this is not a LinkedIn profile. What you really want in LinkedIn is to have a professional looking photo, right? But it doesn't have to be taken by a professional. And you want to be dressed the way you dress to work, the way you dress to Zoom. So I've been reading a lot about Zoom. So Zoom calls, the way we dress on Zoom calls is the new mullet. So we're professional from the waist down, like mullets were professional to the ears, right? And it's party down below. You could be in shorts, sweatpants, whatever. So, we only have to be for our photos, be, professional from the waist up, which is the new, 2021 mullet per se. I thought that was funny considering, when I went to high school.
I think, Reneé, if people leave with at least one thing, it's going to be the concept of the Zoom mullet. So thank you for that. And just a reminder to everybody, if you would like to share any questions, you can feel free to go off mute or feel free to send a chat, and I will be keeping an eye on your questions and share them as they come up. Reneé, sorry, back to you.
Oh, so, and why this photo is so important in LinkedIn is that we have found if you have a photo, you are 10 times more likely to be viewed by a potential recruiter, by anyone of influence who might be hiring. And the reason is if you don't have a photo, people assume that it's just a fake profile. So we do want that photo out there. And another way to set off your brand, and we never think about it in LinkedIn, we just keep that LinkedIn background there, and it goes back to those 3 questions. Who am I? What's my reputation, right? And what really motivates me? So you could have a background banner photo that really talks to your audience when they land on your page right away. If you look at the first photo, right? Look at the first photo. If you didn't know it was a program manager, you're interested in this person, right? You already know that this person probably is into graphs or data points, right? And the second one, when you see the world globe, you know that they have some type of global role. So right away, it's your digital impression, right? Here's my photo, but this is what I do. This is what I'm passionate about. Which leads into that headline area. Everyone's default is your title at the company. That's not really what's going to set you apart. So you might need to have your title, such as here, business integration executive could be your title, but what you're really known for is your M&A experience. So you're going to want to include that in LinkedIn. You might just be a software engineer. Well, let's face it, there's all kinds of software engineers. What do you do best, right? So you want to add to that by saying, oh, I'm a front-end developer, I know Angular, maybe you put in JavaScript, whatever your skill set might be, that will set you apart. And it's also going to help narrow the searches for you as well. Now, LinkedIn says, here are some jobs. It'll narrow those to jobs that you're really fit for. You may want to go ahead and add a slogan at the end, right? So here's a VP. They deliver IT solutions. But by looking at this, we know what industry, right? We don't have to say it's the biotech or pharmaceutical industry, we know by reading this that that's the industry. And I bet this person's really passionate about that. Or even this, sales executive. This sales executive is letting you know, this is how I'm successful. I create simple, repeatable, successful processes for selling. That's how I gain my customers. So you don't want to just repeat your job title. You want to define your brand. So to paint that picture, right, to review, we have our photo, we have our background photo, we have our headline. Now we can be ourselves. And if you write the about statement the correct way, if you write it in first person and you're establishing your brand and you're using the right keywords, you include some accomplishments and what I call in that accomplishment statement, a keyword dump of all your skills. You are actually writing what you would say in an interview. So, Tina, tell me about yourself. If you've written your about statement correctly, tell me about yourself. Also, everyone knows a little bit more about you. They know what your brand, what you're known for, what you're passionate about. So it goes beyond that keyword fit, right? This is that cultural fit. And we have 2,600 characters here, first person. So spend time, go back to that LinkedIn about, because I'm sure you just wrote your title and threw in a few skills, or it's really your bio and it doesn't tell anyone who you are, what's your brand. And one thing that we all can do quickly is customize your LinkedIn URL. So your LinkedIn URL always has your first name, this dash, last name dash, these numbers and letters. That's your unique URL. That's like your domain name, right? Your website page. What you want to do, would anyone come to a website that was this long? No, but you're marketing yourself. People will come to a website that just has your name. If you have a common name, like Sean does, Sean might have to use his middle name in there as well. So customizing your URL enhances your brand. Everyone who lands there is like, wow, this person's technically savvy. It's easier to find you. And you can put your brand on your resume and you put it in all your email signatures. So are there any questions? I want to stop before we get to pop quiz. Comments, questions?
I am not seeing anything in the chat, although there was a really nice tip, which is when you get the slides, you might want to look at your LinkedIn profile as you go through the slides, which seems like it would be very helpful. So thanks.
All right. So is everyone ready for the first pop quiz? I expect answers in the chat. All right. First question. So here's the question. Your digital brand is only for online applications. You never have to worry about your digital brand. You only have to worry about it if you're going to be applying online. True or
Jack
false?
and we're getting lots of falses here. I think you're singing to the choir, apparently.
Awesome. So yes, the correct answer is false, right? And the power tip here is any lack of a digital brand, right? Not being on LinkedIn is a red flag. So A lot of us shy away. I won't give away my age, but I have a 23-year-old child and a 26-year-old child. So that will help with that age range. And so, we tend to be more private. We try to shy away from it, but I'm saying the one place you shouldn't is LinkedIn. So let's move on to topic 2, the online dreaded job search. So I have a video I'm going to play, but I'm going to escape out of this and I'm going to play it full screen. Can you hear it?
It's a little soft. I think there's a selection that you have to have that's like a little checkbox that says share my audio as you share the video.
Yep, hold on.
Yep.
Let me stop share. Let me share again. Share sound.
There you go.
Share. I'm going to start it at the beginning.
Working. We're not seeing the video.
Now?
Yes. The catchy tune. Sorry.
Truth about job boards. By now, you may know that job boards are actually websites where job openings are posted. Maybe you have already jumped in and are searching job postings or have signed up for alerts from popular job boards such as Indeed, ZipRecruiter, or LinkedIn. Maybe you use all 3 and are thinking about adding another. Hold on. Let's take a step back and learn the best ways to use job boards. First, let's start with a quiz. What % of jobs are found through job boards? 30 to 35%? 60 to 65%? 5 to 10%? That's right. Only 5 to 10% of job seekers find their new roles through job boards. Networking, on the other hand, accounts for 75 to 80% of job seekers' success. What does that mean for you as a job seeker? 1. Use job boards as part of an overall job search plan, not your only strategy. 2. Use your time wisely. When deciding how much time to spend on each job search activity, think of the return on investment of your time, your ROI. 3. Know how to use job boards effectively. Here are some smart tips for job boards. Save time by setting customized alerts on job boards like Indeed and LinkedIn. You'll receive leads that match your qualifications and types of positions you are targeting. In addition to the mega sites, consider niche or specialty sites that focus on jobs in your industry or occupation, such as dice.com for tech jobs or idealist.org for nonprofits. Also, be sure to update your resume with keywords that mirror the language of job postings that interest you. If you're making your resume viewable by recruiters, this is an especially important step. As you browse job boards, check out all the jobs posted by companies on your target list of places where you'd like to work. Learning their hiring trends might point to opportunities you hadn't considered. Pay attention to how much time you spend on job boards and limit it to about 15% of your job search hours. That will ensure you have time for other high-return strategies, especially networking. So the truth about job boards is that they are key to your job search, but they must be part of a larger plan. That's why it's important to limit job board usage to 15% of search time. And finally, be sure to use the smart tips we reviewed today to optimize your success.
All right, so we're going to see if everyone was paying attention right now. So here's the pop quiz. It was mentioned in the video. What percentage of jobs are found through job boards? A, B, or C?
People are definitely paying attention.
Indeed. Indeed.
Excellent. So the answer is C. So my question is, and you could, raise your hand, put it in the chat. Again, how many people are shocked by how low this number is?
I'm not seeing a lot of hands that people are shocked. They've probably heard it a few times though, Reneé, right? Oh, we have a couple. Oh, now we got some hands up now.
Yeah, so, the first time people hear this, they're like, no, really? But then if you start thinking about it, how did you find your last job? I've been in career transition it's going to be my 12th year. I can count on, basically my two hands, how many people found their job, landed their job by applying online, going through the interview process, and getting an offer. So even though we're in this digital world, let's face it, people hire people. So it's all about your network, which is great that you all get together here. You can network with each other because that's how you're going to land your next job. So it brings us to our next topic, which is, all right, these pesky applicant tracking systems, how do we beat them? They seem to be around everywhere. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about and try to demystify.
Reneé, we did get a quick question comparing job boards to company websites. And how do you, when you were sharing that job board statistic, did that also include, visiting a company website to see what, roles they have on offer on the company website itself?
Yes, so their career page, because most companies' career pages, Indeed.com is an aggregated search engine. So it actually will go out to companies' web pages and pull all of those onto Indeed. So it's the same thing, right? A lot of companies will have it on the company webpage and also have it on their company page in LinkedIn. So whether you're finding it on a company page, whether you're finding it on Indeed, whether you're finding it on LinkedIn, and there's, dozens of other job boards, yes, that is counting the same job. And it's very frustrating and, disheartening, I should say.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Oh, that's all good. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So, we hear about the ATS system. Everyone calls it the black hole. So what really is the applicant tracking system, or better known as ATS? And why is it around? Why are companies using it? So what it is a tool that provides companies a way to recruit, hire, and track applicants, right? So if everyone applies online, they can scroll through it. It's almost this automated tracking system, right? You don't have to keep Excel spreadsheets. Companies, you're not going to lose paper resumes. So that's really what applicant tracking systems are. So why do companies use applicant tracking system? So it's to aid them in the process. And it really is to help speed up the hiring process by weeding out unqualified candidates. But we all know that the applicant tracking system not only weeds out qualified, unqualified, it also weeds out those qualified candidates, right? And why do companies need it? For every job that a company posts, we have around 250 applicants for one job. How many of those applications come in for an interview? Depends on the company, but about 4 to 6 applicants will be called in for an interview for that one job. So it's impossible for companies, anyone, right? I mean, if they need someone in the next quarter, you couldn't look through 250 resumes, even at 7 seconds a piece, right? So that's why companies use the applicant tracking system. And that's why it would, if you're only applying online, you need to, for one interview, you have to apply for about 100 jobs. So, so in other words, who's this affect, right? Well, it affects you. That's why we're talking today. It affects the job applicant, because there's not just one ATS system, there's about 68 of them out there, right? So that means there's no universal trick to get past the applicant tracking system. We know that over 98% of the Fortune 500 companies use some type of applicant tracking system. And what happens once you upload your resume? You upload your resume, it's scanned by the artificial intelligence software. They parse out keywords. Does it match the job ad? And then it filters based upon those that match according to that job application, which is why if we can bypass, this is the key, if you can bypass the ATS system and network, you see a job on a company website, check out LinkedIn. Who do you know at that job? Do they have an internal referral program? Because 80% of hires come from that employer referral program. Why? Because it is a known fact that if someone recommends you that's already working for the company, that's a better hire than finding someone online. And you think all the jobs that the company is hiring for are posted online? Absolutely not.
Reneé, we had a question come in related to ATS and how they're looking for keywords. So would you recommend that you sort of load up the keywords and include lots and lots of details just to make sure that you get more hits versus the old adage, less is more? And do you just do the less is more with like the resume that you submit instead?
So less is more is what you do on LinkedIn. What you want to do to get past these pesky, applicant tracking systems is right here. It was perfect segue into my next slide. So here's your resume, right? And this is a 2-page resume here. You look at the job description and you can use highlights, whatever you want, and you start looking for keywords, right? Then you start circling. What's in green are the themes. So we start seeing themes: solve problems, solve complex problems, deep solutions to common problems, right? All of these. So we get a really good picture of the ideal candidate here, right? So our resume, those bulleted items, our accomplishment statements, have to include, not all of them, how you've solved problems. Mm-hmm. But the blue words, right? If the title's, this DevOps engineer, you better have DevOps or engineer in your resume. You had to have design and develop some of those soft skills, collaborated, implemented security policies, drive scripting or automation, solve problems. So for every job application that has to go through the ATS system, you have to dissect the job description, find the keywords, and edit that resume to match the job description.
We had two other questions come in. One was related to the cover letter versus the resume. And does the ATS also hit keywords from the cover letter? And then the second question was, I assume, related to both the resume file and the cover letter, especially if it's in one Word document. What about metadata keywords in the resume file itself? Any suggestions there?
So what the applicant tracking system looks for, especially the common ones, are repeated keywords. We do recommend a cover letter. And if the cover letter, if there's only, you can only upload one document, page one becomes your cover letter. If you can upload multiple documents, you might upload your cover letter, you might upload presentations, whatever would make you stand out as a candidate for this role. And I have to tell you, people, there's the camp, don't worry about cover letters, and others that say worry about cover letters. The cover letter can include the same keywords, but a cover letter that focuses on your brand, this is who I am, what I do, right? Besides the title, this is my reputation, and this is why I do what I do. And it's really written about your brand, even if you don't have the skills. I worked with someone a year ago, software engineer, really wanted to get into here in Raleigh, this really cool robotics company, but all his software engineering was in manufacturing. He's like, I have all the skills, but I don't have the industry. So not a problem. Let's give it a try. Let's write that cover letter. Here's why I'm an ideal candidate, because I love solving problems. I love doing this. I'm into robots, and I've done this in my last job. And we did say, I feel, I come from a manufacturing background, which in a sense is parallel to a medical device company, right? Because you're manufacturing a device. However, I do know that I would need to learn some new terms and terminology. He got the job, and everyone he interviewed with said the reason they asked him in for the interview was because of his cover letter.
So yes, we should do them.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't hurt to have the same keywords in there.
Right, you want the same keywords, but you want that brand, because interviewing is a match game. Do you have the skills? But more importantly, are you going to fit with the organization?
Right.
And that can only come out in a cover letter. It can't come up in a resume, and it can only come out in an interview.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. So some do's for the applicant tracking system. List keywords on your resume 3 to 5 times. So when you start seeing those keywords, one time isn't enough.
So, sorry, Reneé, is it like in the summary and then make sure it pops up in at least 2 other past roles?
Correct. So in your summary or in this, skills section, and it should also appear maybe in your job scope of responsibilities and a bulleted item.
And so for this, you've got the bulleted items. We did get a question that said, can you just have a generic resume and put the keywords in a separate section? But it looks like you're suggesting that under the core competencies section that you've got here. So yes.
Right under the, yes. So it should be, you could have a master resume, right? That generic master resume that you pull up and then you tailor for each job.
And there's no restriction on number of pages now, or should we still try to
keep it to that two pages of resume history, right? Page 3, education, associations, volunteer work, anything else that you want to include, that could be on page 3. But page 1 and 2 should be your resume. So I'm always asked, you know, how far back should I go on my resume, right? Well, you know, you don't want to include anything from the 1900s, do you?
Right.
Right? You know, even
so is 10, 15 years like
exactly 10, 15 years, because even think about the year 2000, that's 21 years ago.
right?
How relevant is that in today's job market?
We had 2 other questions, Reneé. One was related to the keywords, and if you're repeating the same keyword 3 times, is it okay to use synonyms, or should you use that same word 3 times?
That is a great question. So some applicant tracking systems don't recognize plurals. And so, you know, take the word strategy, right? So if the job description talks about strategy, but throughout our resume, we're talking about being strategic, that doesn't match. They're not even spelled the same.
So you do want them to be consistent.
Want them to be consistent.
And then do you have any, or can you recommend any frameworks for cover letter? Like why I'm interested, here are my skills, here's like anything like that online that you can recommend? One of our attendees said that they've often been told not to include info from the resume in the cover letter, and just want to make sure they've got the right content and the right amount.
Right. So the cover letter, you know, they're going to read hundreds of cover letters, right? Is that cover letter going to be like everyone else? I'm blah, 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 and I believe I'm the most qualified candidate because I have 10 years experience and BS in this and master's in this. And, you know, from your job ad, you say that you need to have 3 to 6 years of experience doing Y, while I actually have 10 years. Are you going to read that? No. So to answer your question, you could get that point across saying, you know, oh, when I saw the job, I was so excited to apply for it. Such company has been on my targeted list for X amount of years. You consistently receive this award. You were just in the paper for blah, blah, or your CEO did XYZ, and you have a reputation of X, right? My reputation has been doing this. I feel I'm the best fit, right? Like culturally. And by the way, you know, I have, you know, the requirements. You know, I have this degree, this amount of years of experience, and I've attached my resume, you know, so that you can look at all the details. But that's going to grab someone's attention. So sure, but you don't want it to be the focus of your cover letter.
Thank you, Reneé.
One pro tip: applicant tracking systems, your header information, do not put it as header information. It has to be in the body of the resume.
Oh, you mean like the header and the footer?
Information, right, your header and footer, if you put it in the header, the applicant tracking system doesn't know who you are.
That seems like a problem with the applicant tracking systems, but I guess it's good to know.
Right. And, we're so used to putting all that in when we create documents and everything, that's part of the header.
Yep.
But your contact information needs to be in the body. Now, the page numbers and all that could be in the footer, but we want the header information as part of the body of your resume.
What about if you submit a PDF, Reneé? We got a question from Jeremy on that.
So
and everything's
some applicant tracking systems can't parse a PDF.
So you're better off with a Word doc.
You're better off with a Word doc.
Okay.
So what I recommend there, some of the newer ones can read a PDF, and PDFs, no one's editing, it looks better, you can keep the formatting nicer. So if, when you upload it, it says, what type of file name. If it says PDF, it's safe. If it doesn't tell you it accepts a PDF, you can safely assume it's an older one that needs a Word document. And not pages, right? This puts Macs at a disadvantage too, because most companies use PCs, right? So HR is used to seeing a Word document, .doc, .docx, and they can't open a pages document.
Right. So same issue.
Same
Try and keep it to familiar file formats that are much more common. What about, well, and you can do the same thing in Google Docs, right? You can save it as a docx, or we
Exactly.
had one, I think if we could just double click on this notion of the body of the text, basically you mean everything except for the header and the footer, right? As long as it's in there, it can be in different copy blocks in terms of contact info. Right. It just can't be in the header or the footer because sometimes that gets mangled in the ATS. Is that right? Okay.
And so this resume that I'm going to show you next is not applicant tracking system friendly, right? Right away, there's things that the applicant tracking system can't even deal with, right? Can't deal with a photo. It's not really a problem in the US. We don't put photos on our resumes. It's more of a European thing. But a lot of us are like, oh, I'm going to put the little mail icon, right? I'm going to put the little LinkedIn icon next to that. Applicant tracking systems don't know what to do with icons. They also don't know what to do if you want to put in some type of graph, like, oh, here's a pie graph for, because you can insert all these now into Word documents, right? The applicant tracking system doesn't know what to do with that. And you don't want to be wordy.
And when you mean wordy there, do you mean like long run-on sentences versus punchy keywords?
Yes, so you want your bulleted items to be 2 lines, 2.5 lines. They can't be 4 lines. You really don't want to be having a paragraph. No one's going to read a paragraph. So while we might want to keep adding to it to add keywords, that's not what an applicant tracking system wants, and it's definitely not what the reader on the other end wants. And you don't have to use flashy colors, right? Black font is perfect. If you want to use, darker colors, a darker navy, there's the darker greens, just so it's going to look all right when they print it in black and white. You don't want to use text boxes, and you want it to be visually appealing, right? You don't want some of it's over here, some of it's over here, some goes here. So you want that format to be consistent. Now I want to take a moment with keyword stuffing. When applicant tracking systems really gained traction was the crash of 2008, right? Companies, everyone was losing their jobs. So this is really when applicant tracking systems, every company said, I need one. I'm getting 200, 300 resumes. We can't go through it the old way. Well, back in its infancy, to get past the applicant tracking systems, and some people might have heard this trick, you cut the job ad, you paste it at the end of your resume, and you change the font to white. Way back 2008, 2009, 2010, that would get you to an interview. However, guess what? Applicant tracking systems know that you did that nowadays. So do not listen to anyone who tells you, hey, all you have to do to get past the applicant tracking system, don't spend an hour on your resume. Just copy and paste that job ad at the end and change the words to white. So that is not a way to get past the applicant tracking system, or adding white words to the end of sentences. You don't want to do that either. That's called keyword stuffing.
Okay. And you don't even want that at Thanksgiving. I couldn't resist the pun. So, but I mean, I'd never heard of that. I'm not sure if anyone, and so we had a couple questions about length. So can bullets just be one row, or do you recommend?
Oh, absolutely. One row is even better.
And another clarification on text boxes. Is it okay to have boxes around text, or do you prefer to just have, do you recommend just like white space, but in blocks?
So you don't want to insert, in Word, you can insert a text box. Applicant tracking systems can't read a text box. They can read text, but you can't, go up to the ribbon and say, I'm going to put in a nice square box.
Got it.
The only exception, right? If you're in marketing, they expect more graphics and more colors, and marketing resumes have those text boxes. However, they're creating them as PDFs. And if it's a company that has more of a marketing type background, they're going to have an applicant tracking system that can read PDFs, which is the only way you get around those text boxes.
Got it. All right. Anything on tables that people should be aware of? And I think we just covered borders, which was when you were referring to text boxes, right? Don't do borders around stuff either.
No, no borders. And so applicant tracking systems really like, remember ASCII?
Yeah.
So we're old enough to know what ASCII happens to be. So they don't like.
These are MIT people you're talking to, Reneé. I'm sure plenty of.
They want an ASCII format, basically, right? So no tables, no boxes, no borders, just simple.
Thank you. Well, I know you've got a number of excellent slides to come, so I'll hold on the questions from there.
Well, we have some pop quizzes to come. So pop quiz number 1, display your header information in the header area of your resume so you can save space in the body of your resume. And it should be false.
Looks like everybody paid attention, so that's good. This is like one of those continuing education things, Reneé, where you only get the CPE credits if you you answer the question?
If you pass the quiz,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So the next question is, copy and paste the job description to the end of your resume and change the font to white.
And we got a lot more falses there.
Awesome. And so the last slide is summing it up. When you're applying online, let's just apply for roles you qualified for. You want to edit your resume so that it aligns with that job application and the keyword, having the keyword maybe in that executive summary area, in the bulleted portion, and also in the keyword dump area, right, of your resume, summary of skills, and then in your bulleted items.
Reneé, a couple other questions that came in. I know I said I was going to hold them, but these are, one is use of italics, bold, different font sizes. Those are all okay from an ATS.
Those are all okay, just so they're not a new font, right?
Same font.
So if you start with Arial and then you italicize in, Cosmic Sans or something, no, but you can bold and you can italicize, just so it's the same font.
And so we also got a question about the use of accents. So like Reneé, there's an accent over your name right now. Does that goof up the ATS, or is it okay?
Definitely, absolutely. It does.
It does? Really? Okay.
What will happen is it drops the letter.
Yeah. The use of ampersands can do the same thing, right? It can, right. Yeah.
Exactly. And this one, I don't think a lot of people know about this, but applicant tracking systems are pretty smart nowadays, which is why we can't copy and paste the job descriptions. But because every state has the unemployment rules, right? You have to apply to 3 jobs or 5 jobs. What companies have found out is that some people will just pick a company and apply to 5 jobs at that company. They're not even qualified for those jobs to get unemployment. So there's code in there, which is unfortunate for people when they see 3 or 4 different jobs at their targeted company that they want to apply for, because they're going to be kicked out. So what you want to do is say, well, let me apply for these 2 jobs, right? Because these I'm the best fit for. And then if we make it to the interview process, that's something that might come up along the way about these other jobs, because as you get in with the hiring manager might be like, Sean, I think you might actually be better. Amazon is famous for this. I think you might actually be better for this role. I'm going to submit you for that role. And so that's why you don't want to submit for all the roles. And if you're really serious about job searching, just create an email that's your name. Gmail is better. Hotmail gets hung up in a lot of Outlook junk email boxes. And Yahoo doesn't have the same, like when they set up interviews, Gmail works, Outlook works really well with most companies' Outlook, right? Yahoo Calendar doesn't really, it doesn't integrate. There's no way that they know you've accepted it. Where Gmail, if you accept it, it sends it back to the company and says, they accepted, good. They're going to show up.
Reneé, we had 2 other questions on this. And I know you've got some really interesting stuff around the virtual interview. So we'll get to that shortly. Time frame in terms of that limit of 2 to 3 jobs. Is it a year? Is it all in 1 month? Like, what's the time frame for that? And then question about applicant tracking systems in pictographic languages, non-ABC languages, where it's, either, could be something like a different alphabet, or it could just be, Korean or Japanese.
Right. So that's a great question too. So I'll take the first one. So most companies post their jobs per quarter,
Mm-hmm.
but they know here's the jobs I need first quarter. So let's say January, they might post all those January jobs in December, but you're still going to see them in January, but January, you're also going to see February jobs. So it's applying for those same roles for that company, probably within those 6 weeks, because there might be new jobs in late February, March that you're qualified for, right? So it's, you would want to wait a month to 6 weeks.
So at least a month. It could be longer, but at least a month, 6 weeks is a good bet.
Right.
And then on the foreign language question.
Yeah, so if you're applying for a job and everything, the job description and applicant tracking instructions are in another language, your resume needs to be in that language, right? But if you're applying to a job board and everything's in English, you submit a resume that's not English, it's just going to sit there. So
Excellent.
You need to apply, with your resume in the language of the applicant tracking system.
And what happens if you apply and then reapply? Does the ATS update, or do they keep multiple files on file? So if you submit 3 different resumes over the course of 18 months, do they just typically keep the most recent one?
No, because a lot of times the applicant tracking system, your resume is in the bigger database, but it's always associated with the job you applied for.
Great.
Now, the good thing is if you apply for another job, the system's smart enough to say, oh, these people have viewed it before. And then there might be notes as why, you didn't get called in for that role, but, it's still connected to the new role.
Got it.
All right, so pop quiz. You only need one resume. This resume fits every single job that you ever need. You don't have to do anything to it.
And, we're seeing a trend. There's lots of falses here, Reneé. I hope you're going to, your next one is going to.
You should apply for every job at your targeted company. I was trying to make it easy. It's late at night.
We got a lot more falses there too.
Excellent. So now we get to move into this new arena, right? These digital interviews. And so just some quick video interview tips, right? Believe it or not, when it comes to lighting, most of us, when we work at home, most houses are built with the light in the back, right?
Not good.
It's not good. So you want your light source to be in front of your computer. And if you're going to interview, the tip is to actually have some type of light right above the camera so that light's shining on you. You've seen
ring lights.
Like the model shoots, the big lights are always in front of them. That's what you want to do for the interview. And then, you just want to make sure your camera is at eye level. You also want it to be a nice 12, 15 inches away so that you're like not right on top of them. You've been in those video conferences, right? Where the person's like right on you.
One other tip that I found to be really useful on the lighting is that if you're lacking a ring light, desk lamps that are shot into the wall in front of you can actually make a pretty, can make a nice difference. And if you've got a really big monitor, and the brightness on the monitor is really high, that can also light your face, but the coloring isn't always the most flattering. So something else to keep in mind.
Yeah, and then you're ready for action. And one of the things that I do recommend if you're having a video interview, most of us like I didn't do it for this, our AirPods.
Right.
The problem with AirPods are, one, yeah, they have to be charged, right? But I have found that a lot of times, they might just fall out, or they're not charged, or there's some type of static. So if you're going to be interviewing, use, the speaker on your computer like I'm doing today, or, headsets that plug in, or they could be Bluetooth, but, headsets, not the AirPods.
Yeah, and on that, there are some devices, and we're not trying to make any specific product recommendations, but Jabra and a number of other companies sell these little, basically like speaker phones that plug into the USB port on your computer and can put the microphone right in front of you, and the speaker right in front of you, which can make a difference. The thing that I find with those is that whatever you do a test with somebody else first. Ask them how you sound, and listen to how they sound to you, so that you get that sort of more realistic interaction, right? You don't want to have a really tinny voice that's not your voice, or have it be staticky or anything like that.
Exactly. So before you interview, you should always test out the video system that they're using. Put your cell phone on silent or in another room. Tell people that you're interviewing, close the door if possible, but always test out the technology with a friend. Absolutely.
And keep in mind time of day, because like normally I don't have that light on, but when it gets late at night, if I don't turn it on, that whole side, which is normally a window, isn't getting any daylight anymore. And so then the lighting can change. So if you're doing an evening or an early morning call or video, keep that in mind too.
Right. And if you wear glasses, the way to balance that out so that you don't get the glare is to have light source not only in front of you, right? But on both sides to balance it. Yep. So you have 3 light sources, for the interview.
The other thing that I've done is I actually unscrewed the 2 lights that are directly above my head, because otherwise you end up with
a halo.
Yeah, with a bit of a halo. So there's a lot of different things you can do with lighting. I guess the so what is just work on your lighting and make sure it's good. One of our attendees also mentioned that if you've got lights on the right and the left, it also helps prevent shadows, which is another good point.
Absolutely.
And then we had a question about backgrounds. Like your background is blurred right now, Reneé. For some people, they can do that in Zoom. Sometimes computers, don't blur well. Do you have any advice for backgrounds? And
Yeah, sure. So I selected the blur for this just because I was going to be speaking. And also I know when I blur, I have blonde hair. So
it works. Yeah,
it works, right? So sometimes when you blur and you have darker hair, it does not it
doesn't work for me.
Yeah. So if you have lighter hair, you can blur. What I recommend is not to blur during the interview because of the bandwidth issue, right? You want to shut everything down except the interview and not to blur the background.
And the blur is using extra processor to try and...
Right.
So any advice on backgrounds in terms of pictures, books,
doors? So you want it to be, just aesthetically pleasing. You don't want it to be too cluttered.
Right.
You know, your background, Sean, is perfect, right? You know, because it's, you know, you can see a wall, there's a picture way in the background, there's a bookcase, so it's not too cluttered. And so anything that would look similar would work. So what I wanted to get into was these virtual reality, right? So now they're called simulations. When we interviewed, and what you might all be familiar with is, remember, you might have to do a case study, and you know, it was paper and you would have to submit it, or online assessments. Well, now they actually watch you take the assessments. So it's more of a simulation, and the simulations or the case studies, they might put up on a whiteboard for you, and you actually have to work through it. Those whiteboards used to be for engineers, right? They throw up a piece of code and say, debug this, right? Can you debug this? And we'll give you, and you know, everyone's watching you try to debug it. Right? And they know that you're not like looking at Google or something else, like you actually can do this. So that's what's really known as those simulation type of interviews nowadays. They're testing your skills right on the spot. And it could be a simple assessment while they're watching you take the assessment, or it's some type of whiteboard that they are going to interact with you. The auditions, you know, PhD students, when they would go out for their first job, right, they would always have to do some type of presentation, give some type of talk. So nowadays, you know, those C-level executives, PhDs, they give you a topic and they want you to present like I am today. Can you present to a group on a topic? What are your presentation skills? So those are now more auditions because it's virtual. And the newest one that it comes and goes, it's been around for a while, are text box, the chat box interviews. So the reason companies are doing these chat box interviews is, you know, it was flagged your resume in the ATS system. So they can program the chat box to text you, right? And say, we've received your resume. We'd like to ask you a few questions. And so instead of that phone screen, it's going to be those questions. You know, maybe why did you apply, or why are you interested in the company? Remember that while it's a text message, still has to be correct grammar, you know, watch autocorrect. I really despise autocorrect on my phone. So before you hit send, no emojis, right? Because that's going to be translated and put into your record. So humans actually going to read your responses. So it would be like that phone screen. You want to be professional in that chat box. No BRB, right? And don't blow it off. If it's from a company that you applied for, don't just think, oh, this is spam. So the last quiz, and I think you all caught on to my theme here. What do you do if you receive a text message? You're going to just answer in, a bunch of emojis.
How's it going?
Yeah, thumbs up, smiley face. And then I wanted to leave with, oops, hold on. I wanted to leave with this last slide, right? Why I put this all together and focused on who you are and what you do and why you do it is because people might forget what you say, but they don't forget how you made them feel, right? So you might not remember everything that I said today, but you might be like, wow, I feel pretty confident that I can do these things. I can edit my digital brand. It's easy. It's not as difficult as I thought it was, right? So that's really what I want to leave you with. Is this, one of my favorite quotes.
So I want to give the audience a chance for any final questions before I close out. We had a question about 80% of job offers obtained through networking versus job boards. How do we then learn about opportunities? Is it, when we read about it on a job board, does that mean it's too late?
It could be, right? It could be too late. It could be just in time. We don't know. We don't know if there's internal candidates and they're posting the job, right? To also interview external candidates. So you don't know if there's an internal and external. You don't know how long that job posting's been up, right? It could say a few days. LinkedIn says, no, be one of the first 25 applicants or whatever. But in reality, we really don't know. So my advice, if you're looking for a job, is to network and network with AIR. So that's advice, information, referral, recommendation. Make a list of targeted companies. You can start out small, 5, 6 targeted companies. Then as you start to network with people around you, like, I'm really thinking that this is the right time for a change. I want to be challenged. I feel like I've been at this company now for so many years that I can do this job in my sleep. And, I want something a little more exciting, or, I've really been on the client side all the time. I really want to be like help one client, not keep helping, new clients every week. I want to just help one company, and I want to see something from the, cradle to the grave. That would be great. I always just come in for this. So I started my list of targeted companies. Who should I add to this list? Right? And then you could ask, anyone who's made the change that I'm talking about? Maybe I could just talk to them and they can share their story with me. How did they go from that to this? So, the key is networking. While it takes longer, you think it takes longer, but you could apply every day, all day long, and really not get an interview. But if your network recommends you, you're getting a call.
Huge difference, yeah. And we've had a couple questions come in around recruiters and networking with functional managers at target companies, recruiters in HR. There's no harm in working with either retained or even contingent search consultants, but by and large, the networking piece is what's going to really get it for you, right?
Correct. Because that person is going to champion you at the company.
Yeah. Awesome. And so shameless plug for the MIT Sloan Alumni Network and the MIT Alumni Network. If you do a search on something like LinkedIn, you can find your connections. You can also see if there are MIT alums, working there, and that's another potential entree. I do know we're at time now. You have been fantastic, Reneé. Really, really appreciate the time you've spent. I do want to point out to everyone that there's some great content that Renee's colleague Brett is sharing in the chat right now. We will also share that content in the follow-up note. And Reneé, on behalf of our attendees and the MIT Sloan Boston Alumni Association, thanks so much for taking your time with us today. We really, really appreciate it. And we also thank everybody who joined us tonight. We have some great events planned over the coming weeks that I'd just love to do a quick share on. We have a Women in Wine Wednesdays event tomorrow in Boston. Currently, it's waitlist only, but if you're interested, you might want to join the waitlist. On October 19th, we have an Alumni and Life Sciences networking event. That's in Cambridge. Our next resilience event is a virtual event, and that's on finding resilience through making beautiful music, which should be interesting. If you had me singing, that would not be, I wouldn't be finding any resilience because the music wouldn't be beautiful. But the last one is that our MIT Sloan CFO Summit is coming up on November the 18th. And there's a whole bunch of other events that we've got that will be in the hopper. So thank you all for coming. Reneé, thanks again. This was a real pleasure, and hope to have you back again soon.
I would love to be back, and thank you for having me. This was a great experience, and I'm the only Reneé Zung on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me.
Awesome. Thanks, Reneé. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank
Hope
you.
to see you at the next event, and have a great night. Take care.